Dominic Scelzi is a good sprint car driver, but he also understands everything else at play in the sport, including media. On the show today, we'll talk coming back from injury, high limit versus the Outlaws, racetrack safety, and a lot more with him. Let's go. It's Thursday, December 26th. I'm Justin Fiedler. This is DIRTRACKR Daily presented by Kubota Genuine Parts. Now that Christmas is in the books, Chili Bowl will be here before we know it, and along with it comes those Chili Bowl pools. If you want to win your pool, let me help you get the research done with the analytics section at DIRTRACKR.com. In there, you can find a ton of free information, including full race results, driver pages, and a bunch of stats. But if you want access to every tool and number I use, grab a subscription to DIRTRACKR Plus. $4.99 a month or $49.99 for the year. The year subscription, if you get it, basically gets you 2 months for free. And you can cancel really easily at any time. Signing up gets you access to the Plus dashboard, which has added stat tools and visualizations. You will unlock more than 25 extra features, including exclusive insights not found anywhere else. Whether you're a race fan, a member of the media, if you work for a series or track, DIRTRACKR Plus is the perfect resource for current dirt racing knowledge or current dirt racing data to elevate your knowledge. See everything Plus has to offer and sign up for a subscription over at DIRTRACKR.com/GetPlus. Now, he's one of my favorite people to talk to in sprint car racing, and he's always got interesting things to say. It's why he was immediately on my list for some off-season conversation. Dominic Scelis has been really interesting to listen to on the Drivers Project podcast here lately, and we are going to go a bunch of different directions with him today, so please enjoy. Did you ever think that the Scelzi brothers would become media stars? Both of you have podcasts right now. Both of you guys come on and talk about things that have caused controversy this year, but did we see that coming?
Man, not at all, honestly. You would be amazed. The tweet that I put out when High Limit announced they were going to allow gambling, it was just a little bit of fun, and I thought it was hilarious. And the calls and the texts that I got from people in high up places, I was honestly blown away. But I guess that's what you get for listening to a fat kid out of Fresno. I mean, no one should take anything I say seriously, but it's kind of funny, with our podcast, The Drivers Project, that's sort of taken off, and my brother Scelzi says is doing really well as well. So what's neat is there's so much media out there. Like, I watch DIRTRACKR all the time, and what's great is your videos are short enough to where, like, I can go to the bathroom and take a shit, and I can watch DIRTRACKR. So it's perfect for me. But the Drivers Project's a little bit longer, and it's I think every single episode I always have a drink or three, and it's a lot of fun. It's something I never expected I'd do, but it's a lot of fun, and it's cool that my brother's doing one too.
What is the thing that you've gotten in the biggest trouble for that you've said so far on the podcast?
Oh man, I've been in trouble a couple times. I think there was one where I talked about a confrontation with a fan, and I got a phone call and they were like, "Hey, you need to retract that." And, I thought it was hilarious, but we did have to remove that one. But honestly, I wish there was a way for us to release the stuff that we cut out of our podcast, because it's hilarious. I mean, there's just F words flying, and just some really funny inside jokes in the racing world that we can't let all those out. But yeah, I've been pretty good. I haven't been in too much trouble, but I'm sure there'll be time. Honestly, my tweets are what gets me in trouble the most, or my X posts now. But yeah, I don't know. Now that I'm getting a little bit more back into social media, I plan on letting some one-liners fly.
You need to tell Daryl that you guys need to do like a driver's pod after dark, like Patreon or something, where you could put all of that stuff.
That is honestly, we've been talking about that for a while now, and it's hilarious that you say that, because that's exactly what I want to do. I want to have one called 3 Beers Deep or something like that, and we don't start the podcast until we're 3 or 4 drinks in, and then wherever it goes, it goes. But we record, and it's just all the stuff that doesn't matter about racing. That's what my view of it is. Daryl loves the idea, but I think a lot of our guests will be a little bit concerned about it. I had Tyler Courtney stay at my house for like a week or two when the midgets were out here, and I kept trying to get him to do one with me, and he's like, I can't do that. I've got corporate sponsors, and I can't mess around with stuff like that. But I think honestly my brother will be the first guy that I'll do it with, him or T-Mac or Danny Lasowski. But some of these guys that have already been there, done that, they can let their hair down a little bit more. But I think that's what the people want. When you get to see the real person, that's where I think my success on my fan base has come. It's just I'm me all the time, and if you don't like it, I don't really care.
Tell me about your sprint car season. I feel like I think I was looking at your numbers. This was like the most races you'd run in 4 or 5 years. Was that like on purpose, or did that just happen? And then along the way, how did you feel about how it went?
Man, quite honestly, I think I just ran more 410 races than anything, but overall numbers were a little bit down from the last 3 years just due to I had a concussion, and with my work life, it's kind of gotten a little bit past what it has been in the years before. Um, Probably my worst year in 6 or 7 seasons. We only won 3 or 4 races. We really lacked speed, I would say, through the middle of the season, and then I got hurt, and then I struggled to get back. My timing was off. Mentally, I don't think I was there 100%. We struggled on the race car, and then, with a guy like Jimmy Carr, you don't keep him down very long. We worked really hard there at the end of the season, and then like at the very end of the Outlaw swing, I felt like we started clicking onto some stuff that was really good for us. And we went on a string there in October. I think we ran second like 2 or 3 times, ran third 2 or 3 times. We ended up one spot short of winning the Trophy Cup points behind Corey Day, which that was a bummer. I still have nightmares about that. And then we ran second to Macedo there at the end of November. So I definitely feel like we got our mojo back. I feel like I got my mojo back. But it was just a weird season. It was an odd year, something I never expected. And sometimes you have those years. Considering like 2023, we were on the podium with the Outlaws, I think twice. We were in the top 5 like 5 or 6 times. Had good runs at the Dirt Cup, the Gold Cup, Trophy Cup, and then this year we were really stagnant. So we've done a lot of rebuilding as a team to get ourselves better for the 2025 season. And quite honestly, like I'm chomping at the bit. I've been in the gym more than I've ever been in my life. I've been working out every night after work. Whether I'm in the gym or just at home at my home gym. So I'm taking it very serious. I want to get the 41 back on top. And I feel like, now that mentally I'm back in the right place and my timing isn't as off as what it was when I came back from my injury. I think I've got everything running in the right direction personally to be making the right decisions behind the car. And I think, race car wise, I think we're doing the right thing too. So what's weird though is, for me, it's the first time in my life I've ever had a hard time focusing in and disconnecting from work. And obviously getting a little bit older, that's part of the program. And then after the concussion, I had a hard time with my timing and stuff. So, personally had a lot of issues with that, but I think I'm on the right track now, and I'm really excited to see what we can do next season.
What is that like when you're coming back from injury like that? Like obviously you have doctors telling you when you can and can't race or whatever, but like as you try to work your way back in, is there like a point where you're like, okay, I don't feel like myself, but I know I need to keep going? And then, when do you start to kind of feel like yourself? And when you say that your timing was off, like what does that look like out on the racetrack?
Yeah. So for me, what timing, like where my timing was off was, entry of corner. I was lifting a lot off the gas, and I was feeling things in the race car that was making me second guess what I was doing. And then, usually, let's say you catch a guy and you're going to slide him and you're going to get to the cushion and you're going to slide yourself the next corner and put him away, and then you're going to get back up to the cushion. And for me, I'd make the decision late. I wouldn't clear the guy, and I'd get myself balled up on the cushion. Then a car would go by me, and then I would slide myself, and I'd lose another spot. And I think of it as flow. Like when you look at the Outlaw guys, they get into a flow, and when they're racing cars, they don't lose speed and they don't lose space between them. And usually, if you're any good, that's what you do as well, whether you're a regional guy or a national guy. I just couldn't do that at all. I was terrible at it. And, I feel like once I started realizing like, hey, like I've got some stuff going on here where my timing's not right. I was noticing it just throughout the day. I was able to put a lot of work into why and my focus and, getting my head right. And I'm still looking at doing more of that. Somebody that I've been talking to regularly is Glenn Borden and Devin Borden. And, Devin obviously had a big injury, and those guys have really helped me a lot with just what they did to help with Devin, and I realized there's a lot of things that I'm off on and struggling from a concussion, even though I'm not at risk of hurting myself. I definitely think there's room for improvement for me, and honestly, it's a weird thing to not be 100% behind the wheel, and then to not be 100% focused when you get to the racetrack is a thing that I never felt like it would be a problem for me, and it has, shown to be a problem for me. So I'm looking forward to next year. I've got some, plans on being able to separate racing and work. And, my only goal and my only intention next year is to win every race I can. So I feel ready physically and mentally, and I'm very much ready to get to work.
For like sprint car drivers like you, and obviously, me coming out of changing tires in NASCAR, like obviously I understand at least a little bit of what you guys are going through in terms of trying to be better and all of those types of things. But like when I got off, I could go to another tire changer and have him take a look at my film. I could talk to my coaches. But you as a sprint car driver, when you're off somewhere, like, is that a conversation you can go have with Jimmy Carr, or is that something you got to go talk to your brother? Like, how do you find help when you know that you're not right in the sprint car?
That's been the hardest thing for me. I've never been a ultra successful guy on the national scale, but I feel like over the last few years, I've really closed in on being a consistent top 10, top 5 guy. And when this year I had been off so bad, I reached out to Dan Lasowski, and he's a very good family friend of mine. He actually came out for a few weeks this season and really helped me with that. And he was able to pick stuff out. He would just ask me questions like, hey, when you're racing a guy, why do you do this? Or when you got 10 or 12 laps in, you started doing this instead of that. Why did you do that? What are you feeling? And then what we started doing was, I'm racing like this. I'm doing these things because I feel something. And then because I have a lack of comfort or a lack of, trust in myself. Okay, well, let's address it. Let's start working on it. Can we change some things around with the shock package or with how we're actually running the race car and setting the race car up? Okay, well, these little changes are making me feel a little more comfortable. And mentally being aware of the mistakes I'm making, I can address them. And while I'm racing and watching tape back, which my wife and my mom both have videotaped a bunch for me, that way I can, rewatch film. You start to figure out, just like a football player or a tire change or anything like that, where you're making these mistakes. And then when you get into those situations, like for me, one thing I've been famous for this year is pulling a slide job a lap too early or a half a lap too early, where I'm not quite close enough and I let the guy go back around me. And there at the end of the season, I really cleaned that up a lot. And it was something that I was mentally aware of and something that I was focusing on. Okay, hey, I think I'm close enough. I need to wait one more corner. And then just getting myself used to being in that point of dirty air where, all right, now that's when I'm going to make the move. So stuff like that has been very helpful for me. And next year I'm looking at, trying to get Danny out with me at least once a month or so, just to, really coach me. I leaned on my brother a lot with, things I was feeling. And, guys like Ricky Warner and Wayne Pretty and some other guys in the sport that are really good on the wrenches, I would kind of present them, hey, this is what I'm feeling. What have you guys ever had this before? And, both of them were very helpful in times where it was like, hey, you know what, like that's something that a driver is feeling. That's, you're feeling that because you're doing this, or, hey, maybe you need to look at this, or I've noticed this with my program. And, it was just, I felt like it was a lot of homework for me this year to get myself right. And one thing I'm thankful of is the results showed there at the end of the year that we definitely had our speed back.
I want to ask you about a couple of things that I've heard you guys talk about on the show. And the first one is, kind of around the Carson Macedo stuff. You talked about the Kyle Larson effect, and this idea of just like really hyper aggressive racing is something I've even talked about in the last couple of years. And I honestly believe it's like one of the reasons why we haven't seen as much success from Donnie Schatz is just because Donnie races by that code, man. And like, he gets pissed when guys don't race like he expects them to. But what does that look like from the driver's seat? The guys with the huge sliders and getting fed right rears all the time. It seems like some people are okay with it. Some people are not okay with it. I'm surprised we don't see more, black eyes and bloody noses after the racetrack because of it. But from where you sit, what does that look like the last couple of years as this kind of hyper aggressive situation is kind of taken over sprint car racing?
Yeah, I think the best way to explain it is I feel like everybody is racing the Knoxville Nationals every night. It doesn't matter if you're running 10th. It doesn't matter if you're running second. And, Carson had a great point, and it's hard to argue it. He's hired to win races. And, with car owners, there's a lot of car owners out there that don't really give a shit about anything else. They want you to win. And it's hard to argue with that. But just from my style of driving and from how I've always raced, I don't agree with the style that we see a lot of right now. There's a lot of cutthroat stuff where I don't necessarily think it needs to be that way. But again, I'm not near as successful as Carson Macedo or some of these other guys that are under the microscope like that, like an Aaron Reitzel or stuff like that. But one thing I can say is, throughout my career of racing, I've had very few run-ins with guys. I can't think of many times where these situations have boiled over. In all the times that I feel like I've been wronged or rubbed a little bit, dirty, I immediately have a conversation. I think that's the most important thing is, you need to get clarity. And the first thing you're going to hear is, oh man, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it. But, as a driver, you always kind of remember that. And then the next time when that slide job comes and it's not clear, now you know that your tolerance has just got shortened up a bunch for the next time you're sliding them. I don't think I've really ever had to get physical with drivers in the past. I've had a run in with a couple guys, but I think that once you start shortening the tolerances on them, a lot of times guys don't like it, and then there's a mutual respect. A guy that I feel like has not really anymore, but used to always be under the microscope was Justin Sanders, and he had this stigma of, he's going to run into you and he's going to run you over and he's a dirty driver. And I've raced with Justin for like 15 years now, and we'll probably crash here the first race now, but I've never run into an issue where him and I have been upset with each other. He's run me out of room. I've run him out of room. We race really hard, but we have that mutual respect where we know how hard we can push it and how close we can push it. But I really just think it comes down to the driver. And some of these national guys may be pushing a little bit too hard. Like you heard Carson, there's times where he feels he might be driving a little over his head to perform. And I get that. The guy's got his job on the line. Now, do I agree with it? No, absolutely not. But I do understand, and I think that's just the world of racing that we're in nowadays because of a guy like Kyle Larson. When you see a guy like Kyle put on a completely different speed out on the racetrack, it's hard to argue anything against it because, quite honestly, he's a god racing against mortals. And I look at it like that. Like if you were to put me out there on a baseball field or a football stadium or whatever, and I'm like, there's no way I'm going to compete. And, I would have to go above and beyond my physical ability to even, try and do anything. Whereas that's what I think a lot of these really good guys are doing. They're just, they're quite honestly hanging on for dear life when they're trying to race with a guy like Kyle Larson.
I was going to ask you, is this just how you have to be? But if you think about it, gravel's not really known for being dirtying people. And, Brad Sweet isn't really known for dirtying people. Brad had a couple of mistakes this year with McFadden, but generally not a dirty driver. So it's I guess, the idea is that it looks like everybody's going this direction, but I guess it's not true. And do you believe that also, that you can still race clean and still win races against these guys?
I think when you look at the greatest drivers over the last 20 years, Donnie Schatz, David Gravel, Brad Sweet, without question, are the three best over the last 20 years. Then I look at Jason Myers in the early 2000s, Danny Lasowski, early 2000s. So those five guys, to me, I would say would be the best. Joey Saldana. Those six guys, they aren't going to rough you up. They're not going to run you out of room. They're not going to run into you. I have a hard time believing that a guy has to race dirty or more aggressively to be as successful when the most successful guys don't do that. I really truly believe that the more room you give a guy and the more respect you give a guy, you get that back. Because how many times are you going to have a bad night and you're running 6th or 7th and somebody's coming through the field? Well, if that guy's coming through the field and he's dirtied you up, I'm standing right back up in the seat and I'm going to make it way harder for you to pass me than I could. There's other times where it's like, oh man, I'm too tight tonight. I'm not very good. I just need to maintain. And you're going to let that guy go on to wherever he's going to run, and you're going to finish where you need to finish and move on to the next one. It's two completely different theories of racing, and that's why I think racing is so similar to like mixed martial arts. You have guys that are brawlers, and you have guys that are finishers, and you have guys that are going to go down to the decision every time. And I think personally, guys like Donnie Schatz, guys like David Gravel, Brad Sweet, those are going to be more the guys that are playing the long game. And I think guys like Buddy Kofoid and Carson Macedo and, some of these other guys, not that they're dirty. I don't think they're dirty. I think it's just they're more on the more physical side of the motorsport era. And I think that might just be generational. I don't know really exactly what it is, but, it's different for person to person.
The other thing that you said that I was curious about was this idea that lap cars don't have any rights. I don't think I've ever heard anyone characterize it that way or say it that way, but is that how all sprint car drivers feel? It's if you're a lap down, just get the hell out of the way.
You have no rights if you're a lap car. I spent most of my life being a lap car when I went out there traveling, and I remember Donnie Schatz would lap me, and I would get in line and I would just follow him because most of the time he was on the bottom of the middle, and I would try and follow him. And at that point, your job is to not screw up the race for everybody else because you're out of it. And I've been slid back by a few lap cars, and those are the most important times where I have to let my character take over because I just want to T-bone lap cars when they try to race you back. Like, get out of here. You have no business racing. And, it's tough because there's times where you might be running 8th or 10th, and it's a long green flag run, and the lead car is catching up on you, and you're changing lanes and you're racing for a good position. At that point, I think you got to let the leader go and try and just maintain pace with them. But 99% of the time, if you were a lap car, get the hell out of the way, pull in, do whatever you need to do, but don't ruin the race for the leaders because it's just a terrible etiquette. And I don't know. I think some guys don't really care about that, but I'm telling you right now, if you lap me, I'm not racing you at all. I'm getting out of your way. I don't want to be the deciding factor in a race.
You ran with both the Outlaws and High Limit this year, and I'm curious, did it feel different? Like, does a High Limit show feel different than a World of Outlaws show? And I know there's like a lot of World of Outlaws people that work for High Limit, but just like from where you were, did the event feel different? Did the racing feel different, or did they kind of feel the same?
Yeah, the High Limit shows felt like Outlaw shows. Because you got Mike Hess on the radio, you've got all Outlaw officials, you've got, 3 or 4 Outlaw drivers. They really, when you went there, they ran as what the Outlaw shows have always run in my life. They've run like that. But one thing I really like about the High Limit series is, yes, it's new, it's fresh, it's all this stuff. But at the end of the day, I felt like they ran their shows very efficiently. Mike Hess got a lot of heat for Kyle Larson spinning out and something else. But, I watched him call Brad Sweet back on a jump. I can tell you right now, Mike Hess, love him or hate him, he don't give a shit who you are. And I really like that. I felt like the Outlaws, I'm an Outlaw guy. There's no question about it. I'm on the Outlaw side of things just for my alliances and what my hopes and dreams are in the motorsport world. But the World of Outlaws ran much less organized races this year than I've ever seen in the last 15 years of being on the racetrack with them. Quite honestly, I was pretty vocal about it when they were out in California. I felt like the lack of control and guidance with the local racetracks was a huge hit for the World of Outlaw view. I felt like they were, really run kind of second tier at times. And I hate saying that because I am an Outlaw guy, but I really hope they got the wake-up call. The High Limit Series is not taking things lightly, and they're going for blood. So I would like to see the Outlaws step that up on an officiating side and as well as control at the racetracks. I've never really seen them treat things the way they did this year when they came out to California, which honestly I felt like the California races were some of the worst on their schedule. They weren't exciting. They were overwatered. They were rough. They were one lane. They weren't good races at all. Not a good product. So when High Limit came out here, they had a pretty good product. I think that was a lot of the control aspect of it. So I'd like to see the Outlaws step up and refocus on the control of their events and really start dialing in, getting their officiating staff back up to speed as to what they were in years previous.
I heard kind of chatter throughout the year that, and especially towards the end of the year, that your brother wasn't super pleased with the way things had gone on. And, when you guys as drivers approach series officials, whether it's the Outlaws or High Limit or NARC, obviously they're not going to be in a position to change everything every single night. And there needs to be a line drawn of what's the right thing to do and what isn't the right thing to do. But, when you approach a series official over a situation like that, do you have a specific way you try to do it? Are there specific people that like, okay, if I go talk to that guy, I know he's going to listen, but versus this other guy? But as a driver, when you're dealing with those series, like how do you yourself approach those situations?
Yeah, so I definitely approach it the wrong way. Usually when I get my fire suit on, I'm a complete asshole. And, I tend to yell and scream and voice my opinion pretty aggressively. But where I feel like things are best are after the race. You wait till the next day, you bring up the conversation. Unfortunately, from my history in the sport, whether it be Outlaw, High Limit, All Stars, ASCS, NARC, SCCT, it doesn't really matter. I truly feel like more gets accomplished when you are vocal and are revved up, and I think your point does get across a little bit better. Where I think I'm a little bit more taken serious than some of the other regional or local guys is just the time I spent on the road. So when I come to, an outlaw official or a NARC official or a high limit official with a concern or a complaint, I think it's weighed a lot differently than when you get a guy going, "Hey, what the hell? You let that guy jump the start?" I'm usually coming from a place of an understanding of how the sport's supposed to run. So, I talk to Mike Hess pretty regularly, and when we talk of like rules stuff that's going on, or when we talk about officiating things, I think we always usually can see some common ground, and that's where I think maybe the majority of it gets done is when you have a cool head and you're talking after the fact or before the fact of issues that are coming up.
The situation this year, I think it was at Southern Oregon where you guys had the fire and everybody kind of came together and said, okay, we're not going to race anymore. There was a Cali Dirt video posted of that, which eventually ended up getting taken down, but it was a really interesting look into how those things happened. And I gave you a lot of kudos on my show because I loved the way you handled it. You were like, hey man, like this just isn't for me tonight. I'm not going to race.
Yeah.
And it seemed like a lot of people kind of followed you that direction. But I wonder why that doesn't happen more often. Like, how come, even at the national tour level, why don't drivers show up to races and they don't feel safe or something isn't right? Like, why don't they be like, hey, like, I'm just not going to race tonight. Like, this just isn't the right thing. Like, and I had this conversation, with a few friends, and it's like, I feel like you guys have a lot more power than you realize. And I don't know why you don't wield it more often.
So I think there's levels to this, and for me, quite honestly, racing was never my job. It's never been my lifeline. So when I look at a guy like, let's say, Cole Macedo, it makes sense for him to tough it out and go race because that's how he's making his living, and that's how he's gonna continue on in his pursuit of becoming a professional race car driver. Whereas to me, I have two very important things waiting for me at home, and those are my daughters and my wife, and then my business. So I have a lot of things that mean, I would say, more to me than one night of racing on an unsafe condition. And I also look at things, and I've always looked at it this way: every driver has to go home to their family. My dad was a professional drag racer, and growing up, we saw people lose their lives. People very close to me, friends, fathers, friends of mine have passed. Jason Johnson, I was there when he lost his life, and the year before, I went to Australia and raced with him night in and night out, and became buddies with him. So what I look at, from a standpoint is, yes, we have fans in the stands. Yes, we need to put on a show, but at some point, our safety has to matter more than the risk. I'm very vocal when it comes to that stuff, and that's why I think, a lot of promoters out here on the West Coast probably want to hang me just because I'm so vocal about it. If we have a racetrack that's dark, or we have a racetrack that's rough, or we have fire crew guys in tank tops and flip flops, I'm just not going to risk my life. And there's guys that are going to do that, and they're gladiators. And I don't know how much of the video actually got out because I didn't see it, but I did see your video, and I appreciate the kudos. But, one thing I remember saying was, if you guys want to race tonight, God bless you, you're gladiators. But I'm not going to die here. And I don't want anyone else to die here. And, I think some guys, maybe they weigh the pros and cons as, oh, I'm a race car driver, and if something happens, it happens. But, I've been injured in this sport. I've been burned. I've broken my back. I've broken my leg. I've had concussions. I've crashed enough and been hurt enough and laid in a hospital bed enough to know that puts your entire family through so much stress. And then you add so much cost to having to pay those medical bills off. And, not every time is the benevolent fund going to come bail you out and be able to fund anything. So, quite honestly, I think that the lack of drivers standing up is because they're stupid and they think that one race matters more than their life, and they're wrong. That's why I've always been pretty vocal about it. And, I'm luckily I'm on the board with the NARC series. And I think that Bud Kading and I have a very similar view when it comes to this stuff. So a lot of times we're in unison with it. So I just think that this world of sprint car racing is a beautiful world, and we don't need to injure any drivers. And I think of my good friend Chase Johnson. I was teammates with him at Chili Bowl for 2 or 3 years. He's one of my close friends. We share a birthday. His middle name is Dominic, and he's fighting like hell to be able to walk again. And he does dream to get back in a race car, but who knows if that's ever going to happen from and it wasn't anyone's fault, but from a race that wasn't unsafe. All those things were right. They had a good safety crew. They had a good race car. They had good safety equipment, and he still is fighting for now 4 months, 5 months. This is not a joke. This is not a toy. This is something that needs to be taken serious. serious. And I think a lot of our drivers in the sport, especially the younger guys, need to look at it a little bit differently. And I think going back to our previous topic, when guys start looking at it as we're racing humans and we're racing fathers and sons and brothers, then I think you can start looking at it a little bit as to why, some guys race with a little bit more respect than others do.
Obviously you've been around a long time, you've seen different iterations and you're tight with people who've been around a long time as well. What do you think about just generally the kind of current state of sprint car racing? We've got High Limit, we've got the Outlaws and some of the regional stuff going on. And you've been out, you've run All-Stars, you've run some of that stuff in the Midwest, and, we've got Power Eye and the new All-Stars, but like, just where do you kind of sit right now? And what do you think about just kind of the general state of sprint car racing?
Man, I can tell you without a question, right now is the best I've ever seen it. I've been racing sprint cars since 2012. And, I've been going to sprint car events since I was 5 years old. Without question, I feel like right now is the healthiest in competition nationwide, the healthiest in payouts, the healthiest in public eye and public view, fan base. Man, the only negatives I see, truly, the only negatives I see are from safety aspects. And we're going in the right direction. With MedStar being involved with the Outlaws and being involved with High Limit, I think that's a huge help. But I would like to see more series nationally and regionally start taking a grasp on the safety of the sport and start moving things in a direction of, hey, let's start putting some more pressure on racetracks and facilities to give us a little bit of an improvement every year. I think we're out of line going to a place like Cottage Grove comes to mind. Cottage Grove is not going to get a wall built. They're not going to change their lighting. They're not going to, get new grandstands and all these, updates, and they're not going to put $250,000 in 1 year. But if you can work a 5-year plan, and part of the, fees for the series to come to the racetrack maybe goes back to them building their racetracks a little bit better, I think that's a win for the series and the promoter and the racers, because we all need to grow together. We all need to build together. We need to make sure that we can afford, the racetracks can afford to put these high-paying events on, and the series can continue to come back to racetracks that put on great events and great shows for the fans. So I think it's in unison, but that's the only thing I think that we need to really focus more on is the safety aspect of the sport, because we need to make sure that, it's more like NASCAR, where we know 99.9% of the time the driver is going to make it home. We need to really focus on that here in the sport of sprint car racing.
It seemed like it was a little bit of a topic of conversation. NARC scheduling against High Limit in the fall. Obviously, they're going to run the Louis at Calistoga the same weekend as Skagit. Where do you stand on that? What did you think about that move for NARC?
Yeah, I don't like it at all. I don't think it's a good move. I don't think it's good at all in any way, shape, or form. But from a deeper standpoint, seeing both sides, I've spoken to Jim Allen with NARC, and I've spoken with I've talked with Kevin and Mike Hess on this on the High Limit side, and kind of what I gather is Calistoga is where NARC started. They've always been a part of the schedule, and when they went away, that was an outlaw weekend. So we've always had an outlaw race on top of that, and guys have always just had to pick and choose. Obviously now it's paying $100,000 up north. Calistoga's coming back, so now there's both of these events are bringing a lot of exposure for the sport. Quite honestly, what I would love to see happen, which I don't think will, Calistoga's been out of the game for a while now. I think they need to bow their heads and move their date back a weekend and do a Friday, Saturday that weekend, or they need to look at bringing the Louis Vermeil back to non-wing and midget racing, and then letting the wing guys have a weekend later in the year. I don't want to lose the Louis for NARC because that's an important race, but I do understand there's only so many weekends in a year, and Jim Allen is doing all that he can to grow the NARC series. My only concern, which I didn't get any clarity on either side, was the Dirt Cup is the biggest race in the NARC schedule, bar none. I don't know what that conflict looks like, because I know the Santa Maria date with NARC conflicts on $26,000 to win 360 show up in Skagit. That raises a question as well. And then we also have obviously the Louis Vermeil and the Skagit Nationals. So I don't like the conflicts. I feel like big events like that, everyone needs to take off. But for so many years, it never mattered because the Louis Vermeil was a non-wing only event. I'm sure with time this will get sorted out. And I think there's a way that both series can win and both racetracks can win together. But I just think right now it was, something that doesn't look very good on paper. I don't like it as a competitor because I want to do both, but I trust that both series will work together like they have in the past and make it right for the racers and the fans.
Do you have, as somebody who hasn't run for the NARC championship in a while, is that a situation where you're going to Skagit, or are you sticking in going to Calistoga?
It's going to be hard for me to not go to Skagit. I can tell you that. I know my possibility of winning will probably be way higher in Calistoga. I definitely want to go to Calistoga. I definitely want to go to Calistoga probably more than I do Skagit. But for what Kevin Rudeen does for West Coast sprint car racing, it's hard to turn that down. And, a big part of us not chasing points, we didn't plan on chasing points when Corey Day won it a few years ago, but races got canceled and we ended up working out great for us to do that. But last year we wanted to make sure we weren't going to chase points. And this year we're going to make sure we're not going to chase points. But we're doing that because we want to hit all of the big races on the West Coast. And, I don't know if the NARC series or the SCCT series will ever allow for that to happen and be able to run both their schedules and all the big races. I sure can hope for that. But, for us, we just don't really care to have the pressure of going to racetracks we don't want to go to. There's certain facilities on the West Coast that we prefer to avoid. And, we're going to plan on doing
that. You mentioned Kevin Rudeen there. He has put obviously a big focus on 410 racing, on the West Coast. Do you see a difference the last couple of years, with how many cars there are and what the shows look like and things like that, since guys like Kevin have really kind of started to put a focus on it?
Absolutely. I've seen an increase in, and I don't think it's just Kevin. Kevin has been a huge part of that. And the Dirt Cup going 410 again is a huge catalyst, right? So like we've got all these guys that they run their 15 or 20 410 races in California. They run for $3,000 to $5,000. They're happy with that. Well, now we're seeing bigger paying events with national series come to the West Coast. We're seeing the Dirt Cup being a mostly national or mostly regional show, paying, I think it's $62,000 at the base, and if you lead more laps, it's it's more. I look at I won the Dirt Cup in 2021, and then 22 we ran second or third, and then 23 we ran third or fourth. And I know both the years it was 410, or both years we didn't win, I went home with like 36,000 and 46,000 on the final night. So when you look at that, that pretty much makes a whole year for a regional team. I think that that was a huge part of it growing, but Jim Allen with NARC has put so much work into building a successful schedule and a successful series. There's still a lot of work left to be done, but he's come so far and he's done so much for the series and for California 410 sprint car racing. I guess that's why I'm so upset with this conflict, because it's really important that the Rudeen Foundation and the guys up in Skagit and the NARC series continue to stay on a good page and continue to work together to help grow West Coast sprint car racing as a whole. We need to keep pushing this 410 program and not get rid of the 360s, but really push that these big events are 410 based and keep working the same direction. I'd hate to see guys working, different directions, because then nobody wins in that. You're going to get less guys at Dirt Cup. You're going to get less guys at the Skagit Nationals. You're going to get less guys at NARC races. So we all need to work together.
The ASCS this week announced, rule changes for National Tour, no dished wings, some changes to the aluminum block thing. And I know you and Hayfer-Teep not long ago kind of had a back and forth about the aluminum block thing, but are these rule changes good? Are they not good? It seems like anytime people start talking about dished wings, everybody's all up in arms about it. Is that like a real thing, or is this just people kind of, being nostalgic to a different time? Like, explain to me, where this is going and if this is good for sprint car racing or not.
So where I'm seeing this going is I'm seeing that the ASCS is wanting to get onto a similar and compatible rules package as what the Outlaws and High Limit and every other series in the world does. Where the disconnect has come with 360 racing is they've allowed the dish wings forever. California got rid of them, I think, in 2021. So the West Coast, we don't have this problem. We just all go 410 rules. Quite honestly, I think it's a good thing. I don't know why you would want to be different than a 410 series. I think the goal needs to be, I buy a sprint car and then I figure out what engine I'm going to use, a 360 or a 410. Keep the rules the same. What I would like to see is I'd like to see use your tire, give us tires that are good tires. We need to get back to the RDHTW days where the tires were high growth and they were actually good wearing tires and you could reuse them several times compared to what we've had over the last however many years. I think that's a big importance because if the tires are better and then you can use them more, you don't have to worry about getting your car as good. The driver can make up for a little bit more and makes the racing better. So the rule changes with the the steel and aluminum blocks, I don't think are as big of a deal as some people lead on. The steel blocks are always going to run better, unless you had no weight break at all. I don't see the aluminum blocks taking over. Really, it's just for me a repair thing that I think is the right thing. The flat dish wings, though. I mean, come on, guys, it's 2025 now. I mean, let's leave the past in the past. We're not running. We're not running mile tracks anymore either. So I think we need to start moving towards that. And I would think that maybe a little bit more politically correct move would be, hey guys, by the end of 2020 or by the end of July 1st, 2024, we're not going to allow, or 2025, we're not going to allow dish wings on the national series. You can run them on the regional series through the end of 2026, and then we're going to kind of go by them because wings, yes, you can resell them, but most of the time guys are going to either crash or they're going to use them up to where they're falling apart. So that could have been a little bit better of a way to present it. That's how they did it out in the West Coast, which I thought was great. But quite honestly, guys, we've known about this change for years. Like, we need to start moving in the right direction, and flat dish wings, I think, are the right direction.
I want to ask you about your brother. When we talked last year, you kind of talked about him being, a potential World of Outlaws championship candidate, and we saw that for a good part of the year. He was really good. Do you think that will continue to be the case? Like, obviously I wouldn't expect him to be worse next year. But do you think he's good enough right now to beat Gravel nightly, to beat Macedo nightly, to beat Buddy Kofoid nightly? I know they've had some crew changes and things like that, but where do you see his 2025 going?
Yeah, it's tough to say. I definitely think he has the ability to be a champion. They have all the tools to be a champion there with KCP Racing. Do I think he's a better race car driver than David Gravel right now or Carson Macedo? Quite honestly, no, I don't. I think there's times where my brother's a momentum guy. So when he gets rolling, like how he did before the Knoxville Nationals, he is the best driver in the country. I believe that without question. I think he's better than David. I think he's better than Carson. I think he's better than Brad. I think he's every bit as good as Kyle when he gets on a run like that. But then when they have their downturns, I feel like it's a lot harder for him to break back up through that. And then, now we're looking at 7th or 8th in points instead of, 1st, 2nd, or 3rd. So I think we saw both sides of that team this year. They started off very hot. They had a little bit of a lull. And then their July and August, they got super hot. And then it seemed like after Knoxville, they almost like took off the rest of the season. So they're still a young team. Adam is a young crew chief. This is his first crew chief job. And one thing that, like, why I look at them to be so deadly is they're invested in each other. There's no look at, hey, we're not going to bring in a new driver. We're not going to bring in a new crew chief. Those two guys, they're in it for the long haul, and they're going to continue to get better. So I think, for them, this is all growing pains. Maybe they didn't finish better in points this year, but I know they had a better season. They won more races. They started to get more consistent all around. I think really they just need to focus on, maintaining that top 5 consistency night in and night out. And, I put them in. They're going to be a top 3, top 4 guy next year for sure. I truly believe that. And it's just going to be a matter if they can manage their downturns. They need to, 7th place was a very common theme for them this year. They need to turn that 7th into a 4th. And if they can find the way to do that, find the speed to do that, I think that they will definitely be deadly. I know my brother, throughout the year, I've noticed him struggling. As the racetrack falls off, it seems like they fall off and they struggle with grip late, which, amen to that, brother. I've had the same things. But, finding that grip when the racetrack is really slick and being able to, maintain those last 10 laps of the feature, that's what it takes to be successful at that level. And, anymore, it's becoming, that's what you got to do at the regional level as well. So if they can, just get themselves a little bit better there at the end of the race, I definitely expect them to be a top 4, top 3 car. And, while I think David is going to be the new reign supreme with the World of Outlaws, I think that, he's going to be all about Carson Macedo and Buddy and all those guys up there. I think for Gio, though, they need to focus on, instead of winning 3 to 4 races, they need to try and get themselves into a 6 to 10 wins. If they can get that instead of second and third, I think the points will come.
I'll get you out of here pretty quick. I know you're busy. I want to ask about your 2025 plans. We know High Limit's going to start at Las Vegas, then go to California. Are you going to do that stuff? I know you said you're not going to run NARC for points, but what are you guys looking at for 2025?
Well, I've actually got a contract on my desk right here, and I'm excited to announce I'm going full-time true outlaw racing next year. We're just going to bounce around. I don't know what we're going to do. We're definitely going to go to Vegas. I'm honestly, I don't know where the Outlaws are that weekend, but I'll be surprised if my brother doesn't go to Vegas just to be a gambling coach. He's all about hitting the slots and hitting the tables, so I could see him making a guest appearance there. But our plan is probably to start in Vegas. We're going to do all the High Limit, all the Outlaw stuff on the western coast between Arizona and Washington. Not sure about Skagit and Calistoga yet. And then outside of that, I don't have any plans to go to the Midwest, but we're going to run the Dirt Cup, the Summer Nationals, Trophy Cup, all the big stuff on the West Coast. So I'm looking at probably right around 65 to 75 races. And, my focus is going to be the 410. Right now, I think we're pretty 410 heavy on our schedule. But as the last few little bits of schedules come out, we'll be able to put some pen to paper. Honestly, I wouldn't mind going to Texas to start it off. The Power Eye Series and the All-Stars coming back is really exciting because, like when I was out there, the All-Stars they were killers, man. You had, Reitzel and Paul McMahon and Corey Elias, and you had a lot of Zeb Wise, a lot of really, really good, talented guys. What I'm looking at now with Power Eye and the All-Stars, there's no question about it. They're going to be much weaker series than what they were than what the All-Stars were years previous. But I think that's what the sprint car world actually needs. With having two top level series like the Outlaws and High Limit, I think this is perfect for a guy like Caleb Henry or Zane Duvall or some of these other guys that are really good regionals to really get some light shed on them and show how talented they are in an area where they're not going to have to race against Tyler Courtney and Aaron Reitzel every night. And they're going to be a perfect breeding ground for the next guy to come on up. And I'm excited to see what that does. I can tell you right now, I wish more than ever I was based out in the Midwest and I could go run these Power Eye events and these All-Star events, because I think that would be perfect speed for me. That would be right up my alley.
Yeah, that's what actually Jeremy Elliott talked about it. I've talked about it, but it's like we're at a point right now where you could run Ohio, Pennsylvania, pick up All-Star races, run Power Eye, make good money, race a lot, and pretty much never have to face the Outlaws or High Limit. It's actually a pretty incredible situation that they've got right now.
I agree. I think that, back to what we were talking about earlier, I think it's the most healthy I've ever seen the sport. There's a lot of money being thrown around regionally, which is great. I wish we could cut out from, Utah to Kansas, and I could just be a little bit closer to the Midwest. Just shrink that up a little bit. Or maybe we could find some Russian truck drivers that don't want to do their logs, and we can get back there every weekend. But I love the idea of what's going on throughout the Midwest in sprint car racing. And, hats off to the World of Outlaws and hats off to Brad Sweet with High Limit. And, those guys were the starting point. Really Brad, more than anything else, he is the one that started this big war and this unsettling of the tides. And it's been great for the racers. And I just hope that it continues in an upward tick like it is. And God bless all these series. I hope they all make it, and I hope they all are successful and profitable. And this is what the new future of the world of sprint car racing looks like.
Thank you for doing this. Can you give me like the Drivers Project plug? Like where like how often do you guys do that? Where can we find it?
Well, the Drivers Project goes every week. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook at the Drivers Project. I don't make it on every week. I'm sure Daryl wants to strangle me because I didn't make it on last night. I worked a little bit late, but it's fun. JJ Hickle, myself, we have Carson McCarl on at times. Daryl Turford is the Drivers Project. And then Sam Haffalap, he's on there as well when he's not yelling at me or anything like that. But it's a fun group of guys, and I think what's cool about it is they're all racers, so we have a different view on stuff, and nobody really pulls a punch. We kind of say it how it is. And, I really am, honestly, I'm blown away with the amount of drivers that will text me or call me and tell me, hey, like I only watch DIRTRACKR and the Drivers Project. And I'm not even saying that just because I'm on right now. I mean, it's truly, that's the common thing. Like Carson Macedo said it when he came on. He goes, I watch DIRTRACKR and you guys. That's all I care. And, I don't pay attention to anything else. So you're really the only show I watch. So knowing that we're in the graces of you. That's pretty cool that the drivers and the teams are watching both of us.
No, I appreciate it. Dom, thank you so much for the time. Love everything you have going on. Big fan of yours, and thanks for the time today.
Thanks, Justin. Next time we'll do it on the Drivers Project.
There you go. Perfect.